Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bitesize Cinema. I'm your host RJ McCready, and for this episode I'm going to be taking you guys back to the year in 1987 to look at the iconic action movie RoboCop. So let's fire up the patrol car, let's have a look at the trailer, and I will see you guys soon.
We've got to volunteer. The body is on the way.
Sure. All Detroit has a cancer. Cancer is crime.
In a robe.
As you know, we've entered into a contract with the city to run local law enforcement.
We were able to save the left arm.
What? I thought we agreed on total body prosthesis. Now lose the arm, okay?
We get the best of both worlds. Onboard computer-assisted memory and a lifetime of on-the-street law enforcement programming.
Hey, Louis, it's RoboCop.
This guy is really good.
He's not a guy, he's a machine.
What are they gonna do, replace us?
Murphy, it's you.
Go get him, boy.
Thank you. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. Anything you say may be used against you.
You better back up, pal!
Your move, creep.
The future of law enforcement. RoboCop.
Thank you for your cooperation.
And welcome back, guys. So the synopsis for this film is: in a dystopic and crime-ridden Detroit, a terminally wounded cop returns to the force as a powerful cyborg haunted by submerged memories. It's got a 102-minute runtime, it's an R-rated movie, and it's classed as a action crime sci-fi. It was directed by Paul Verhoeven for $13 million, and he is known for other films or action movie, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Starship Troopers, and The Hollow Man starring Kevin Bacon. So Paul Verhoeven has had a successful career in Hollywood with a nice catalogue of movies there, some iconic movies, pretty much all of them. And not to forget, you also got Rob Bottin attached to this film. He did the magnificent special effects, and he is a legend, Rob Bottin. You'll know him for his special effects on The Thing from 1982, which is iconic. He also played Captain Drake in The Fog, and he also went on to go and do Total Recall. So he had a little bit of an unsteady alliance with Verhoeven on set. They didn't get on too well, but when they sat down and watched the picture and were at the screening with the red carpet and all that, they sat down together and went, we've actually created quite a good film here, and they became good friends, and that's why we wanted to go and make Total Recall. So a little bit of trivia there. It's backed by Orion Pictures. Now when I think of Orion Pictures, this is me going back, this is RJ going back to the 80s with me box TV. I saw Orion Pictures come up on the screen to the TV, and I'd go, I'm probably going to watch a good film here, because that was a time before internet and all that, before you knew what you was watching. And Orion Pictures had backed films like The Terminator, Excalibur, Rambo First Blood, Return of the Living Dead, Platoon. So you knew you was going to watch some gritty, iconic film, and they ran from 1978 to 1999. So for me, they're a bit of a sort of cult iconic studio, same as Canon, I suppose you could say. And let's have a look at who's in this movie. So obviously we've got Peter Weller, who plays Murphy, and he was in Buckaroo Banzai, another film, iconic crazy movie of the 80s. You got Nancy Allen, who plays Lois, and you may know her for her character in the Stephen King movie Carrie. Dan O'Hillery, who plays the old man, that's all he's credited for in this film, just the old man. And he kind of goes under the radar. He is, you may know this or you may not know this, he actually plays Greg in The Last Starfighter, the lovable alien who supports Alex Rogan, and he's also the bad guy in Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which has had a massive resurgence in the horror world. You've got Ronnie Cox, who plays Dick Jones, and you know him from Beverly Hills Cop and Deliverance. Kurtwood Smith, who does an amazing job as a bad guy in this film as Clarence Bodicker. And it's a bit of an unusual role for him, because he usually plays a sort of non-bad guy in other roles, and he does a pretty good job of it in this, so I'll get back to that later on. And you've got Miguel Ferrer, who plays Bob Morton, and I think he was recently in the NCIS TV role. And just to mention, it's a late Bob Morton, late Miguel Ferrer. I think he passed away on us a couple of years ago, so it's quite sad. So that's some of the cast, just to name a few. So it's a pretty solid cast in this movie, part of the building block, as I always say. And let's talk about that building block. Let's talk about how this film got put together. It wasn't quite as straightforward as you'd think for a film which is now iconic. And when we mention RoboCop, it's kind of become a household name. So the idea for RoboCop was actually kicking around in the early 80s, and there was two screenwriters called Edward Newmere and Michael Miner who had looked at the film Blade Runner in 1981, and they came away and they thought it'd be pretty cool, we could make a film about a cop who is actually a robot who fights crime. So they penned RoboCop together and they tried to get it through a studio, and the studios kept turning it away. It went through every director's hands, including David Cronenberg. Could you imagine David Cronenberg in this film? It would have been... It's body horror anyway, I think, RoboCop. It probably would have taken it up a gear. So anyway, it landed in the hands of Paul Verhoeven. He took it home, and his wife actually read the script, and she said, this has actually got a little bit more to it than just what people think as a RoboCop, as perhaps maybe a cheesy movie. And as it happens, the film actually goes into themes of media influence, greed, privatisation, capitalism, identity, dystopia, and the human nature. So his wife noticed that this film had a little bit more to it than just a sci-fi action movie, which the final project that does actually explore all those themes I just mentioned there. So Paul Verhoeven got interested in the script. He went to a studio and he went to Orion Pictures, and because they had the success of The Terminator, they said sci-fi seems to be the thing at the moment, so we will greenlight this. So it eventually got put together, and as a result of that, it made Best Picture of 1987, spawning the franchise of a couple of sequels, TV series, video games, comic book adaptations, crossovers. It's always had a... They've always talked about a crossover with Terminator versus RoboCop. I don't know whether that would be any good or not. It'd probably be like the Alien versus Predator. I won't go into that, but it's always that sort of idea that you think might be a good idea. And I think I mentioned it made $50 million at the box office, so RoboCop became a success. And today it's still a household name. People who mention RoboCop, it's relatable. And it's currently in the KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken advert at the moment. There's RoboCop making an appearance in that. So it did well. It did very well. And there were also a few other casting choices here. Aside from Peter Weller, who does an incredible job. I couldn't think of anybody else that could do RoboCop now. And that was Michael Ironside and Rutger Hauer. Could you imagine them two as RoboCop? I don't really see that myself. I could probably see them as the Clarence Boddicker character, because those two are both badass, but they were sort of in line for the role, but it didn't turn out that way. So so there goes a couple of our casting choices there. And whilst I'm talking about all this stuff, you know me, you know my trivia and all that sort of stuff, I cannot help myself. There's some trivia here for this guy. It's quite a lot of it actually. So to start with, it's quite a funny story here. It's actually, this is for real. This is actual robbery suspect. So in 1987, he ran into the cinema, trying to evade the police, and he was so engrossed by the RoboCop on the screen that he actually sat down and watched the rest of the movie right until the end. And when the lights came on, all the police were there waiting for him. He got nicked. So it's quite a funny story. There's actually a 12-foot RoboCop statue in production for Detroit. I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't know if someone from Detroit might be able to help me out if you're listening. And what else we got? We got so when Peter Weller was wearing this suit, he lost £3 a day in body sweat, so that's to create an air conditioning unit for inside the suit. Pretty clever. I mentioned that it's been rejected by Hollywood directors several times. The special effects, or the computer special effects on here, was actually created by the Commodore Amiga. The actual suit cost $1 million. It's one of the most expensive special effects at the time. And Paul Verhoeven actually credits James Cameron for this film. He actually says that I would not be able to make this film if it wasn't for James Cameron, because of the success of Terminator and Orion. That's the reason why Orion Pictures greenlit this film. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool when directors get on like that in Hollywood. I'm sure it doesn't happen all the time. And before I go into the review of this movie, I thought I'd mention the actual adverts that come up in RoboCop. They're so funny. You got that Nukem game show. That's it, you invaded my country. Boom. It's just so funny. And you got some sort of sunblock 50,000. You got this woman covering herself in all this like blue sunblock. And you got the car advert, the 6000 SUX. So there's moments in this film where it gets really violent. I mean, it gets big time violent, but then there's moments where you have these little releases of comedy. So the two work quite well together, and I think that's what makes this film more sort of iconic and stand out from other movies which were kicking around at that time. So let's have a look at this film then, guys. Let's do a RJ McCready bite-sized review on RoboCop. So it is a future of Detroit. It's a dystopian future for Detroit, and they're on the verge of collapse due to financial management, and crime rate has gone up through the roof. And the only way the city can deal with this is through the Omni Consumer Products, and they're actually a company that want to rebuild the city, and they made a deal with the police force to say that if we run the police force and help you guys out with our technology, it would be an exchange to rebuild the rundown sections of the city. So you've got Dick Jones and Bob Morton, and they're both guys who work for the company, and both have different ideas for this law enforcement idea. With Dick Jones with the Ed 209, and Ed 209 comes into the boardroom. It's pretty cool. It's some stop motion animation, and you get that classic scene, and we were all talking about this at school at the time, where Ed 209 comes in. One of the executives picks up a gun and points it at Ed, and Ed goes, "You have 10 seconds to comply, you have 5 seconds to comply." And Dick Jones is going, "Oh no, I'm trying to work this out." And then Ed blows the hell out of this executive, big time, just blows him apart. And it's a bad scene, but it's a funny scene, because someone comes out and says, "Someone go and get a paramedic," and it's like, yeah, as if a paramedic, you know, all the best will in the world, this guy ain't surviving that. And to Dick Jones's anger, Bob Morton gets the upper hand now to create RoboCop. You're then introduced to Alex Murphy, who is our main protagonist in this film, and he is just recently transferred to the Detroit police, who are having a really hard time trying to keep a cap on the crime in the city. And he's partnered up with Anne Lewis, and on their first assignment, they're in pursuit of a notorious robbery gang with Clarence Boddicker. And he comes out with that classic scene where they're in pursuit. "Can you fly, Bobby?" And then that's where the body goes onto the screen and causes all sorts of havoc. So Murphy and Lewis, they pursue them into a hideout, into a warehouse, and they split up and they try to look for the gang. Lewis gets knocked out by the gang members, whilst Murphy suffers a more ill fate where he gets surrounded by the gang and shot to pieces with shotguns, machine guns, a whole lot. His arms and legs get blown off, and he gets shot in the head and left for dead. And this scene right here actually created a little bit of cinema trauma for a lot of people when I talk about this film. So then the OCP claims Murphy's body on a secret or top secret cyborg program, and they turn him into RoboCop. And his three primary directives are to serve the public, protect the innocent, and uphold the law. To where he is then released onto the streets, where he creates an efficient campaign to fight crime, where he takes on a gang of rapists, a robbery guy, and then he starts to create some media influence here, becomes like a public figure. And there's a funny scene here where he's on camera and he's like talking into the camera saying, "Be good," you know. It's just all sort of tongue-in-cheek humour. But whilst RoboCop is upholding the law and is on this efficient campaign. He starts to have flashbacks and his memory starts to remember scenes from his past life, including his death, which gives him nightmares. And then whilst he's on patrol, he comes across one of Clarence Bodica's men called Emil, and this activates his death memory, and he realises that it's him and Clarence Bodica who actually killed him. And he starts looking through the crime database, and everything starts to become clear and apparent, and he now goes on a mission to locate these guys. And then whilst all this is happening, this running feud between Dick Jones and Bob Morton. Jones hires Bodica to murder Bob Morton. It's quite a horrific scene actually. He blows both his kneecaps off and leaves him there for dead with I think it's like a grenade or something in his mouth, and he blows up and he gets killed. And then whilst all this is happening, RoboCop is at a cocaine factory with Clarence Bodica, and he's sorting out all his men. He's giving them a proper sort out. You get a really good scene here with gunfights, and he pretty much wipes out Bodica's empire here, and he arrests Bodica, and it's pretty gruesome scene here because he sort of spits on RoboCop and you got all the blood sort of going down his visor. And this is where RoboCop finds out that Dick Jones has employed Clarence Bodica to kill Bob Morton. So RoboCop has uncovered Dick Jones's nasty little enterprise here. So he goes to the OCP tower to arrest Dick Jones, and he confronts him about the murder of Bob Morton, and Dick Jones admits this to him. But as he admits this, he activates Directive 4, which protects him from being arrested, and he's now released the Ed 209 units onto RoboCop, and this is where RoboCop gets pretty slaughtered by these Ed 209 units. He gets shot up, and he tries to escape, but he's been battered and almost killed to a point, you could say. And Dick Jones has told all the other police that RoboCop has gone rogue, and they now try to ambush him. RoboCop escapes to the garage, and he finds Lewis, who helps him out, and they escape to an abandoned steel mill to help repair himself. And because all the other police think that RoboCop has gone rogue and the problems with Ed 209 and the OCP, Detroit has now gone into chaos. The police have gone into strike. And to make things worse, Dick Jones has released Bodica and his gang, or the remaining gang members, and he's armed them up with some pretty powerful weapons, a powerful shotgun that can blow up vehicles and stuff like that. And he's also given them a tracking device for RoboCop, so now Bodica and his men are tracking RoboCop at the steel mill. And this is where you get the final shootout between RoboCop and his men. And this is where you get that classic scene where one of Bodica's men, he drives into a toxic waste container, and he comes out all melting and he says help me and all that. It's a classic scene. I remember this when I was at school. The kids were talking about this scene, and he goes up to one of the other gang members, and the other guy goes, "Yeah, get away from me, man," like that. And then he gets run over and taken out. So it's an iconic scene for RoboCop. It's one of the memorable scenes. Some great special effects there. And then RoboCop has his final confrontation with Bodica, gives him a good old punch up, and then with the installment spike that he uses for his data computer, it's pretty badass actually. It just comes out of his arm, just slots it straight through his face, and he kills him. So he's taken Bodica out, he's taken out all his gang members, and now he goes back to the OCP to sort out Dick Jones. And you get a pretty cool scene here where he takes on one of the Ed 209 units with Clarence Bodica's shotgun, and then he goes into a board meeting, and then he reveals the Directive 4 recording of Dick Jones's confession. And then Jones grabs a gun and he takes on the old man, the OCP chairman, takes him as hostage, and then the old man very cleverly fires Dick Jones, and then this makes the Directive 4 irrelevant. It shuts down the whole system, and then this gives the opportunity for RoboCop to shoot him through the head, and he goes crashing through the window. And then you get a scene where he falls to his death. And then you get the old man, he comes out and goes, "Well done, son, that was some nice shooting, what's your name?" And then RoboCop walks out and he turns around and he goes, "Murphy." And then that's it, and that's where the film ends. You've got the closing credits to that classic RoboCop score. And I forgot to mention the film composer, because that's a classic, it's a brilliant soundtrack to this film, and that was by Basil Polidorius. He's a Greek-American composer and also did the soundtrack to Conan the Barbarian, so you might hear the sort of same tones to that. But there you go, that's the film. That is RoboCop, guys. 1987, classic, iconic. Deserves its place in one of the iconic characters from the 80s, you know, next to the Terminator, John McClane, Rambo, all those types of characters. So, and as a roundup for this film, it's just a good film. It's a gritty film. It runs at a pace. There's no point where I'm bored with this film. Like I say, it hits all the right points. The action's good. There's a hell of a lot of violence in this movie when it ramps up. Like I say, special effects are great. And it still holds up today, I think. I think RoboCop still holds up as an iconic 80s movie. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. I will be back soon for another episode, and I thought whilst I'm kicking around in the mid-80s, I thought I'd go and review Aliens next, the James Cameron classic sci-fi movie. So I'll be looking forward to doing that one, so look out for that one next. And as always, guys, I'm a proud member of the Legion Podcast Network, so please go and check out all the other shows there. There's some great shows kicking around. And you can find the show on YouTube and iTunes, and I've also got a Facebook page, so if you want to go and check that out, there's a whole lot going on there. Some great people that contribute to the page, so thanks, guys. Thanks for all your support and stuff like that. So there you go, guys. I'll be wrapping the show up. Keep it bite-sized, keep it safe, and I will see you guys soon.
If you enjoyed this show, then make sure you check out the other great shows on the Legion Podcast Network, like Cinema Psyops, Cinema Beef, Devour the Podcast, Duncan and Bo Come Correct, Exploding Heads Horror Movie Podcast, Friday the 13th, Get Slayed, The Helming Power Hour, Hello, This is the Doom Show, Hero Hero Go Show, Kill the Cast, Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, Jerry Hates Action, Legion After Dark, Mental Health, Obsessive Cinema, Discourse, Pick 6 Movies, the podcast by The Cemetery, the podcast on Haunted Hill, the Psychosemantic Podcast, Rick Radio, House of Wax, Dude Looks Like the 80s, Rabbit and Red Radio, the Shadecast, Short Bus Cinema, 2 Drink Minimum Commentaries, the VD Clinic, Who Will Survive Horror Podcast, and Witch vs. the Doomsday Clock. With such a wide spread of shows, there is guaranteed to be a niche for you to fall in love with. Horror, politics, movies, books, sex, music, commentaries, health, video games, kaiju, action, news, comedy, and opinions that would most likely get you killed in some parts of the world. We are proud to bring you some of the best podcasting in the world. Check us out at www.legionpodcast.com, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other dark corner of the internet where podcasts can be found.